A very good afternoon to all the distinguished delegates who are here. I represent IQLECT. IQLECT is a very young organization which helps BFSI and the infra world to use real-time insights, right? I know we've just come back from lunch, so what I'll do is keep it short and narrate a little story which might be interesting to most of you. With a real-time analytics platform already ready to use, we set out with a very, very simple hypothesis, right? The hypothesis was there is much more data, there's much more money in our data than we think, right? And for us who's focusing on the infra world and the BFSI world, which would be a better place to start than with data centers, right? So I'll just take you through a very quick customer case study. We're working with a data center, a very large cloud service provider who has 6 data centers, who's got presence across India, APAC, Middle East, and has over 2,000 customers, right? We saw a few interesting observations. Importantly, they were, for monitoring all of their infrastructure, they had 6 different tools, right? They had tools from OEMs, they had open source tools, some enterprise tools, and all of these were based on MySQL database. So quick show of hands as to how many of you here relate to the situation that I've just listed out. For all of your infra, do you use multiple tools, etc.? A few other interesting observations. So none of these tools were able to process data in real time, right? All of these tools were sampling data at 5-minute intervals, or probably lesser, a little less or more. But this was predominantly because of the underlying technology itself, which was MySQL, right? Most of the operations were reactive, in the sense there were a lot of manual work which needed to be done. Obviously, with 6 different tools, the operations team had to go through each of these tools, pour through log files, right, and then arrive at root cause analysis, right? With our promise, obviously, they were a little interested. They wanted us to prove how our technology could help with a very simple problem, right? So this is a problem that they have. They said they face a lot of server crashes, and it is probably regular with any kind of infra. But what they were doing is setting thresholds, right? So whenever the server utilization, for example, goes over a threshold, the operations team would get an alert and they would take the necessary action. But the problem also is that there is a huge pattern that goes before the threshold is reached, right? There could be a slow buildup, like you see on this graph, before the threshold is reached, but that is not being caught today. Right? We're only looking for the threshold, but not the patterns before. They asked us if we could identify the pattern and help them avoid a server crash in certain instances, and that's what we did. What we did was look at the entire pattern before, say, a utilization reaches a threshold, and predict these server crashes, send alerts, and also probably help them take remediation measures like turning off the server or whatever else they needed, right? And obviously the outcome is higher availability of their servers, applications, and the kicker here is that all of this took us 6 hours to do once we got access to their systems, right? And just continuing from here, they just wanted to see if pattern detection could be used for their firewall traffic, right? So that's exactly what we did. Again, we identified a lot of patterns to do, like one IP accessing multiple firewalls, one IP sending a lot of traffic and session requests to a firewall, but there was no handshaking happening, and maybe correlate that with a server utilization, CPU utilization, and come up with these patterns to identify and block malicious traffic. That is something that we did to improve their security, and this might look like we're exaggerating, but this actually took just 1 day of our time, right, using our platform. Very quickly, there's another case, and this was actually what was blocking them for a very, very long time. They had a bunch of virtual machines sitting on hypervisors, and not great tools to actually monitor them. And typically, hypervisors overcommit on the resources that they provide to VMs, right? And when one VM, which is the culprit, keeps going off, all the other VMs on the same system would also feel the impact. What we help do is monitor at the hypervisor level, monitor at the VM level, and monitor the application all from a same place to identify what could have been the root cause for a specific resource contention. When I say resource, it could be storage, it could be compute, any of this, right? And this helps the team actually reduce the efforts they take to do root cause analysis, ensure that the app is available to them at all times, and again, with multiple ready-to-use connectors, it took us about 2 days, right? So these were kind of stories that we were able to build with them on a very first attempt, and what has led us to is this, right? The situation today is that we have the entire infrastructure sitting in the data center, like a load balancer, firewall, all your networking devices, hypervisors, virtual machines, and even building management systems, right? All of it sitting in one place, going into that single little box that you see here, which is the IQLECT real-time analytics platform. What the platform does is completely abstract the complexity of analyzing data in real time away from your operators and takes up a lot of this work themselves, right? What we also did is have an integration with a third-party Hadoop system for a slightly longer-term analysis, because that wouldn't be capable of doing real-time analysis, right? The entire integration for one data center took us 3 weeks, right? So coming back to our hypotheses, right? What led me or led us to think that there is more data or more money in your data is that, first of all, today you're not sampling all of your data. You're getting very limited data. So more data, more must be the value. And the other thing is, real time is not happening today. You're probably processing data 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or probably a few hours later. Getting all of these insights in real time can improve the value of data, right? So the situation is that we've integrated for this cloud service provider 6 data centers. We do 10 different kinds of devices and applications, 4,500 devices being monitored today, and close to 12 TB of data being processed every day using a single machine that we put in the data center. That's close to about 12 billion events per day, right? And all of this leads to 30% reduction in cost of tools, obviously cutting down from 6 to 1. The other is, there's significant reduction in time spent by your operations team in doing root cause analysis, going through data in files, Excel sheets, log files, etc. And a total financial impact of close to $1 million. This is not just from tools, but from energy efficiency improvement, from the HR optimization, from tool cost, availability, all of this put together. And if there are cloud service providers here, there is a better kicker, because the entire platform could be used to monetize these analytics with your customers, right? It could be 10x of what you spend for our tool itself. Very quickly, I'll just take you through the platform itself and why all of this was possible. We've taken a completely radically different approach to analytics, right? Today, whatever you see is predominantly a 3-tiered architecture. You do something like a Kafka, a Spark, a Cassandra, put them all in different clusters, scale them, etc. And this has its own complexity with scalability. What we did was build these components internally using proprietary technology. And yes, it might be surprising to a lot of you, but we built our own NoSQL database as well. And this proprietary technology enables us to be more flexible and scalable with our data processing. And something not very unique to us, but what we do is first process the data while it's on the wire, and then store the data, right? So this reduces the latency to a few milliseconds. Whenever an event happens, we're able to process and act on all of these insights in a few milliseconds. And like I just showed you, we do petabytes of data using a few systems and reduces cost by a lot, right? For a BFSI banking crowd, it is extremely important. I think there wouldn't be anything more important than having insights in real time and having extreme security and availability of your applications for your customers and internal use, right? While monitoring your infra is something that the platform can do, we have 2 areas of focus. So one focus area is infrastructure, monitoring, and analytics, like I showed you. But the other is we're building applications with banks to process data in real time. Now, this could mean applications like distributed fraud detection, right? Today, there is simple fraud detection based on value of a transaction, but what it's moving to is hundreds and thousands of fraud transactions of very low value. So something like that needs to be detected in real time and see the patterns, right? Do continuous value at risk kind of calculations, compliance and liquidity management, trade reconciliation. These are some of the use cases we're working with banks to develop something very specific for them, right? And this is exactly why we're here. We want to explore if real-time analytics is of interest to you, and whether it is for your infra monitoring or for your core banking related analytics. If there is interest, please drop by at our booth, which is right at the back, with our colleague, of course. We'd be happy to answer your questions, show you a quick demo, and see what we could do for you. As promised, very short. If you have any questions, you can shoot your questions now.
This also does SIM correlation?
I'm sorry?
The IT side, it does the SIM correlation?
It does correlation. So, off?
Logs?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Absolutely. So, we are kind of agnostic to the data itself. It could be like log files. It could be SNMP data coming from devices. It could be clickstream data. But once the data is in the platform, we can correlate across all of this. So we could correlate data from a firewall with data in a server, for example. And all of that can be done.
So it's both business plus IT. Data.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions? Great. So we're really excited to be here and would love to meet over with you. Do drop by at our booth and have a great event. Thanks to elets for having us over too.
Pleasure is all ours here, Rahul, and thank you so much for introducing us with your brand and the services you provide. I would request Mr. Rajneesh Khare, who's the head for digital transformation, social business and new media and mobility banking for HDFC Bank, to please come on stage and present a thank you token to Rahul for making his presence here and introducing us with his services and technology. A huge round of applause for Rahul and Mr. Rajneesh.